Hi, I'm Ricky Robertson. I'm an educator and author who works with schools in developing social, emotional, and behavioral supports for students impacted by adverse childhood experiences and trauma. In this session, we're going to be exploring behavior as a form of communication. I want to begin by inviting you to imagine that you're a classroom teacher, if you aren't already. And in this scenario, I'd like you to imagine that you have a new student in your class who does not speak a word of English or any other language that you may speak. So for me, that would be like if I had a new student who only spoke Swedish. I don't even know how to say hello in Swedish. And this student, in my scenario, doesn't speak a word of English. So there's no way for us to verbally communicate with each other and understand each other. Now, I'm going to ask you some questions. And I want to invite you to just kind of keep it simple with simple yes or no answers. And some of these questions might seem silly, even absurd, but they're going to help us to arrive at a deeper understanding related to behavior. I want to begin by asking you, is it your fault that you and the student speak different languages? Would it be frustrating at times for you and this student to understand one another? Do you believe that it's possible that the student could learn to communicate in a different language? And lastly, is it going to take time and effort to support this student in learning a new language? Now, as you reflect on these questions, obviously, it's not your fault or the student's fault that you speak different languages. Yes, it's certainly going to be difficult at times for you and the student to understand one another. The student can absolutely learn how to speak English. In fact, in my example, I might even learn a few words of Swedish in the process. But this student might require me to plan for his linguistic needs, to think about how I might front-load vocabulary, what type of supports I might embed in my instruction. This student might need small group linguistic instruction or even one-on-one support. But it's going to take time, it's going to take effort. Now I'd like you to imagine that you have a different student in your classroom. And this student speaks English, so you and this student could have a conversation. But at home, every time this student's father is angry, upset, has had a rough day at work, his dad will yell, scream, curse, throw things, sometimes even punch his fist through the wall. So here we have a situation where we have a student who communicates through a behavioral language we'll call fist through the wall, and a classroom that has a behavioral language of raise your hand and keep a safe body. Now, when there's miscommunication, this young man might yell, scream, curse when he's frustrated. He might even throw things and just walk out of the classroom, making it very difficult for you to teach and for the other students in the classroom to learn. So I want to ask you some questions. Is it your fault that you and this student communicate with one another through different behavioral languages? Could it be frustrating at times for you and this student to understand one another? Do you believe that this student could eventually learn a new behavioral language? In other words, do you believe that this young man could eventually learn to raise his hand, wait his turn, keep a safe body, behave in ways appropriate to your classroom? And lastly, is it going to take time and effort to support him in learning a new behavioral language? Now let's think about this for a second. Is it your fault that you and the student communicate through different behavioral languages? Absolutely not. You didn't teach the kid to punch his fist through the wall when he's upset. However, when I work with teachers that have students with really challenging behaviors, they often blame themselves or blame the student. I can't teach with that kid in my classroom. Or I've been teaching, 20 years and now I have a student who makes me feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And we're in a difficult and painful situation, but what I want to invite you to consider is that it's not your fault, it's not the student's fault, but we are in a situation where we have a student who's going to need support to learn a new behavioral language. So the question we can ask ourselves is, am I, as the adult, as the educator, as the professional, willing to be responsible for helping this young man to learn a new behavioral language? That might mean we have to advocate for additional support. It might mean we have to try new strategies and do things differently. But am I willing to be responsible for teaching behavior, just like I would any other subject, because it's essential to his success in school and in life? Now, is it going to be frustrating for you and this student to understand one another? Absolutely. It's going to be frustrating for you because you might feel like you're walking on eggshells, kind of navigating a little minefield every day, not wanting to set him off, derail the rest of your lesson, disrupt the class, create an unsafe situation. But it also might be frustrating for the young man in this example because you might be behaving in ways that to him don't really seem very authentic, don't really seem to command a lot of respect or authority. And so he in turn may not necessarily trust you and understand exactly what you truly mean and expect. Now, do you believe it's possible for him to learn a new behavioral language? In my opinion, we have to ask ourselves that question every day. Because if I have a fixed mindset as an educator and I have a student who's misbehaving in my classroom and I just go, well, I got a bad one, then that student is most likely going to spend most of the year out in the hallway or in the principal's office. But if I'm willing to say, no, I believe and I know that it is possible, that I can positively impact this young person's ability to learn and positively impact their behavior and their social emotional development, then it is far more likely to happen. We have a tremendous amount of research on the fact that what the teacher's self-efficacy beliefs, in other words, what we believe is possible, highly influences student outcomes and what we actually achieve. And is it going to take time and effort to support him in learning a new behavioral language? Absolutely. Depending on the amount of trauma this student has experienced, depending on situations that might re-traumatize this student, either at home or the anniversary of a traumatic event, etc., it can be a journey that takes several months, even years. In fact, it often might look like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, where we see that student making progress, and then suddenly something happens. It's the anniversary of the death of a loved one or the incarceration of a parent, or a traumatic event happens at home or at school, and suddenly we see them regress in terms of their behavior, and it might feel like we're starting all over again. But I want you to keep in mind that as educators, we often water seeds that we will not be there to see blossom. So nothing that we do when we show students love, care, and respect is in vain. And we may have to plan for the behavioral needs of that student, anticipate them. If I know that every time I put a math worksheet on a student's desk, she rips it up, then tomorrow, when I put that math worksheet on her desk and she rips it up, I already saw that coming. So it would actually benefit me to plan for that behavior and understand that this time around, it might be better if I actually sit with her, we get started on one of the problems together, or we try a different approach to plan for those behavioral needs, to think about shifting our instruction and classroom management styles to better address the social, emotional, and behavioral needs of students proactively. And then also, in the scenario I gave, this young man, he might need Tier 2 supports, like social, emotional, small group supports. He might even need Tier 3 supports, like one-on-one counseling, even wraparound supports for the family. But it's going to take time and it's going to take effort. And it also is going to require a team. When we think about behavior as a form of communication, and we look at behavior through a trauma-informed lens, we understand that through their behavior, our students are communicating fundamental needs for safety, belonging, and feeling valued within healthy, protective relationships. Now, I want to pause for a second. I said through their behavior. I didn't say good behavior, bad behavior, expected, unexpected. I just said behavior. Meaning for some students, they might want to feel a sense of safety, belonging, and feeling valued, so they join a sports team, or they work hard at their academics, or they join the school band. But for another student, they might not get those needs for safety, belonging, and feeling valued met at home. They might not get them met at school. And so in order to feel a sense of safety, belonging, and feeling valued, they might join a gang. They have a sense that people have their back, that they belong to something, that they matter. Our work as educators is to help our students to get those needs met in ways that are going to benefit them now and throughout their life, and are going to support their learning and their achievement. Now, I want to also unpack for a second when we talk about protective relationships, healthy protective relationships. This might surprise you, but when I sit down with teachers to talk about a student with severe behaviors and to come up with a plan to support that student, the first question I ask is not, what are the challenging behaviors? The first question I ask the teacher or teachers is, how do you feel about this kid? Because all learning occurs within the context of a relationship. And if the relationship is broken, it doesn't matter what strategies I recommend. It's going to be like pouring water into a cup that has a hole in the bottom. It's not going to hold. So I then have to say, okay, if the teacher says to me, Ricky, I'm at the end of my rope, I do a happy dance every day this kid is absent, or they just break down and start crying, I can have empathy for that adult. I have been there, pushed past my limit. So I turn to that teacher and those teachers and I say, what can we do to better support you? What can we do to start to heal this relationship between you and this student? And now let's talk about the student. And I want to know about the student's strengths, passions, curiosities, anything we know about that student's background, anything we might know about their exposure to ACEs or trauma or things that may trigger them in the school environment. And then I want to talk about some of those challenging and difficult behaviors and begin to come up with a plan.
The Trauma-Informed Teaching Series is made possible by a partnership between the National Education Association and WETA. For more information, please visit adlit.org/trauma.